Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
Wow, nice synagogue. Where's the synagogue? Hello. Hi, Leah.
Hello.
There he is.
Oh yeah,
Rub your
I'm
meow.
here. I just haven't. Sorry, I was busy. I was busy doing the managing technical aspects and letting everybody in and so on and so forth. I didn't mean to frighten you.
Not frightened.
Of course not. Oh, I don't expect you to. Yeah, the Jubilee Synagogue, Tony says.
Yeah. So where's that at?
Everybody missed you, Aaron. They're
Oh, I
saying.
missed everyone.
Yeah.
Missed everyone.
And unfortunately, Rabbi Danino, I spoke with him, and he's still in Israel for another 2 weeks, I think.
Yes, and he'll be back and participating, God willing.
I hope so. I've been having some exchanges with him, and he's been teaching me a lot, and I'm always I always worry though that I'm somehow gonna worry.
No. If he didn't like it, it's like a cat. If you didn't like it, he'd just go away. Right.
Well, we had this very interesting conversation about one of the other parshas that we have read in his and your absence. One of the ones that you missed, where
which one?
Was it last week that we were talking about Yodayanim?
Yes.
Yodayanim and Ovot.
Okay.
And I don't know, since we're talking about Torah, if we should say the prayers and go ahead.
Yeah, let's just make the bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Hashem notin haTorah. I did the closing bracha, but that's okay. It's the same thing. Blessed are you, Lord of the universe, who gave us, bless us with the Torah. Bless us with your Torah. So I'm not dressed up today. I'm in layperson's clothes. I've been doing a lot of work stuff. So here I am.
Oh, right. Wonderful.
Yes. All right.
I'm wearing my Zappa shirt.
Nice. All right. So you were talking about Achrei Mot, and what was the issue?
Well, the issue was we had chatted about the words that they use that is often translated as necromancer and diviner.
Yeah.
And those words are usually ovot and yodeanaim. Are those words. And I had realized like why and the derivation of those words and the the origin, meaning that ovot has two etymological backgrounds. It can be used. One, it means necromancer, but specifically, it's someone who makes a sound, really, or
Someone who makes a sound. Okay.
What? Yes.
Someone who makes a sound. Okay.
So, yes, and it's also used as one who communicates. To talk, essentially making a sound, and it also means, specifically refers to a bottle, such as a leather bottle. Okay, it's also used to refer to a leather bottle, depending on the context. And I was imagining about the reason is that there is a linkage there.
Yeah.
And that is what?
Yep. I'm following you.
You're following me, right?
Yes.
Because they're talking to spirits, and those are the people that put spirits in spirit bottles.
In a bottle, genie in a bottle.
Right. Genie in a bottle, exactly. And the next thing that they talk about is Yodanaim, which comes from the root word Yodea, to know. To know, meaning someone who knows your future, someone who knows all about you, a knower. And it also happens to be a euphemism. I've seen that. I've been recently writing these, about the Psalms, and I see that word also used in reference to Hashem, the great knower, or things like that. And so it carries with it some very interesting implications, and by happenstance, we follow this Parsha study with book club, and we were reading this thing called the Testament of Solomon, and lo and behold, on that very day, the part that we were reading, the Parsha that we were reading of the Testament of Solomon, the chapters that we were reading of the Testament of Solomon also included a lot about these leather bottles as demon traps, spirit traps. It was kind of fascinating. Wow. It was a link. Yeah, it was a very interesting link. Yeah. So today we have Emor. Are we on Emor, or is Emor? Are we ahead? Because
we're in Kedoshim.
Okay, so then we're in Kedoshim. This is in this one. Wow, Mike. Okay, so fine. Never mind. Are you sure we're in Kedoshim?
Yeah, positive.
Okay, good, because then I got us off track.
I think the event calendar might be off.
Yeah, the event calendar is off. I think I looked it up. I put it off track. So I'm sorry. We're all in Kedoshim, which means holies of the holies, which is a little bit of this is actually in that, and we talked a little bit already last week. But let's go on. Let's go on.
Okay. So just as an introduction, what Kedoshim talks about is some Moshe. For the first time, is now going to address the entire Jewish people. And instead, it was Hashem speaking to Aaron, and then Aaron speaking to the elders. So this is going to be the first time that Hashem speaks to Moshe and says, speak to the entire congregation of Bnei Israel and tell them the following laws. So these are going to be some of the essential laws of what it means to be a Jew. Because up until this point, remember, Bnei Israel, they were slaves in Egypt, and they really didn't have much of Jewish characteristics at that time. What differentiated them from the Egyptians were their names, their clothing, obviously just the belief in one God. I forget, actually, there are four things, and I feel terrible that I forget them. But there are four characteristics that they maintained. But outside of that, there really was no understanding of what it was to be a Jew. And if you recall, when we talk about our discussion about the miracles that occurred, which are the plagues against Egypt, which led the Jews out, Hi, Sammy, which led the Jews out of slavery. My son came in. Come here.
Hi.
Hi, Sammy. Sammy, come give a kiss. Come say hi. Oh, all right. So Hashem says this will be a sign for you, meaning the Jewish people, as opposed to the Egyptians, because the Egyptians were going to be a nobody. And so really the plagues, the 10 plagues, weren't meant to sustain a story for Egypt. The Egyptians were not going to be talking about the 10 plagues for years to come and holding seders. It was going to be Bnei Israel that would hold the seders and have the holiday to commemorate the Exodus and God's greatness. So the Jews, being slaves at that time, kind of needed a reintroduction. There needed to be reintroduction of the relationship between God and the Jews. And one way that God wanted to do that was to show the Jews, I'm here for you. I'm going to show you these miracles. But up until this point, what does it mean to be a Jew? What do I have to do? Well, what are my obligations? And so what we learn, one of the things we learned from Kedoshim is it starts with some really positive things. So these are like positive commandments. And then afterwards, there were some warnings about if you don't keep things, and this is how it's going to go. So what we can learn from this generally is you should always start a communication with someone from a positive place before starting from like a consequence place when you're talking to someone.
This is like the sandwich technique of calling in your colleague and telling them that they were naughty or whatever, like when you're in HR. Yeah, the compliment sandwich. You tell them the good stuff, and then you tell them what they need to work on, and then you finish up with another little nice thing.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no reason to intimidate someone. Don't start a conversation with intimidating someone about if you don't do this, then that. Just go ahead and be positive about it. So I don't know if there were any laws, Rabbi Yirmiyahu, that you wanted to talk about, or should we?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we had talked about a bunch of great things before. I mean, the most important thing of the whole Torah is right in here. It's Leviticus 19:16. I mean, if we gotta.
No, wait. You're skipping a whole lot. Let's just go.
I know.
Let's just start from the beginning. Let's start from the beginning.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, we can't.
So
I don't know where you're going with this.
Okay, so obviously the Torah is written in a way also, right? So it's telling us, number one, to start from a positive perspective before going into a negative. But then it's also addressing us and telling us what's most important. So it begins, of course, with, you should be holy because I, God, your God, am holy. So let's analyze this for a second. You should be holy because I am holy. Now, we all know the understanding of the whole principle of Judaism is everything is one. Okay, the understanding of everything is one. And this whole understanding of God is the oneness. And we are part of that. Our individual selves, there's like this illusion of individuality from our bodies standpoint. And the Parsha is going to reveal this further on in the Parsha, how our hearts are all linked, our souls are all linked, and we can equate that with our heart. So what it's telling us here is, you should be holy because I am holy. So like, you should treat your life with reverence, with the reverence of godliness. Recognize the godliness in you. And when you hear people say namaste to each other, what are they saying? What are they saying? What is the translation namaste? What is it? Something like the holiness in me recognizes the holiness in you, or something like
the light in me recognizes the light in you, or something like
this.
that.
Here.
It's right
here.
here. And we talked a little bit about that last week, about the fact that it's not saying you shall be holy. It says you shall be holy, for holy am I, Hashem. And most people I think a lot of people make the mistake of interpreting that as saying, you're going to be holy because I'm holy and I chose you. And that's not what I think that's not the reading, that's not the interpretation that I get out of it. It's more like along the lines of what you're saying. It's God saying, you shall be holy because I'm holy. Like, you need to get on the same vibration as me. You need to raise yourself, your holiness, up to my level.
Recognize your holiness. Yes.
Recognize your holiness. Exactly.
And your divinity. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's interesting because one of the I think the first principle, Sufi principle of one of the 40 rules of love written by Shams of Tabriz is something to the effect, I'm not going to get the exact language right, but something to the effect of how one perceives God is how they themselves perceive themselves. So if you perceive God as being a kind of an oppressor, then you yourself are interpreting, you're perceiving yourself as an oppressor. If you perceive God as love, you yourself, you are a loving person. Similarly, what this is addressing here in the Torah is it's saying, recognize that holiness. We can, when you're doing that and you're recognizing God's holiness, you are creating that level of holiness in yourself because you are one with God, and that's the thing. So in a meditation, you might say in a meditation mantra, you might say, I am holy, I am holy, I am holy. And that's not a very a narcissistic thing to say, but what you're doing is, it's the same thing as saying, I am one, I am one. You're raising that vibration. So anyone want to comment on that? Any comments? All right. So the next one is really important.
Well, I'm going to make a big comment. I'll make a comment, and I'll talk about this right up front. Right? I mean, this is a nugget of, I think, what the Baal Shem Tov would talk about is devekut, right? Raise yourself to fusion with God. Am I correct?
Yes. Absolutely.
This is a seminal sort of teaching of Hasidic Judaism, which is to raise your, joyfully raise yourself up to this level. So go ahead.
And I think within it, subsumed within it is a recognition that there are things that are unholy that you should stay away from and refrain from. And I think that's what the Parshas, there's this introduction here that you should be holy because I'm holy. And now we're going to talk about some of those rules. And so it's also talking, I think, about intention. And so in the Rab Danino and other rabbis, when I'm studying with them, what they say is what's really important is someone's intention when they're performing a mitzvah. It's not just the act of performing it, but it's the intention while you're performing it.
It's the kavanah.
What's that?
It's the kavanah.
Yes.
It's the kavanah. It's the focused intention for effective prayer. It's the sincerity and the honesty and the intensity with which you are truly pouring your heart into the action. Yes. Heart, mind, soul, everything.
Yes. If I can if I can give a brief anecdote about recognizing the appropriate kavanah in a blessing. Several years back, I was microdosing psilocybin, and so I went to I took some of this particular species that I was unfamiliar with, and I knew it was stronger, but it was hitting me really hard before I left my house. And at that point, I could feel myself like approaching the, crossing over. And I said, well, you know what? I really just wanted a microdose, but this is much more than a microdose. I might as well double down. So I took more, and then I went to synagogue. And so I just drove as fast as I could.
Does Rabbi Danino know this?
He wasn't. It was the albino penis envy, and so off I went, and I got called to make an aliyah on the Torah. So for those of you,
God, goodness, were the words levitating off the Torah
wait,
page?
it gets so for those of you who have not attended a Jewish Shabbat service, what the highlight of the Shabbat service is when the Torah gets taken out of the Aron Kodesh, which is the Ark, which simulates where the Ark of the Covenant was. The Torah gets taken out and it gets read in public. And as part of that service, it's divided up into 7 readings. Oh, that's pretty cool, Duffy. Yeah. So so it gets divided up into seven readings, and then people come up and they make a blessing, and someone else, a designated person in the synagogue who studied the reading, because the Torah is not written with vowels or the musical notation that it's supposed to be chanted in. So there's someone who is designated who will study that for the whole week, and they will read it while you will make the blessing. So it's my turn to make the blessing. And I get up there and I put my hands on the Torah as I'm making the blessing. And, time stops. And I begin to recognize that generations before me, the men in my family, made this blessing I'm about to make. And generations after me, God willing, there will be my children and my children's children who will make the same blessing on the same Torah. And it just hit me that I'm one in a long line of people who have preserved this tradition. And I felt the power and the significance of this moment. It's all coming down, the weight of all of that was coming down on me. And then I realized that I wanted to read my portion, and I didn't study it. And so what will happen when I try and read it and I make a mistake? So the tradition in synagogue, if you read or if someone else is reading and they make a mistake, there are people in the congregation who are following along really closely, and they're waiting for a mistake. And when someone makes just the slightest mistake, they shout the correction. And so there could be, when you make a mistake, there could be 3 or 4 people shouting from the audience. Imagine shouting a correction, and it could be so insignificant. It could be something like, I'm going to just say, Daber et kol adat. I would say a dot, and 5 people would say, adat, And so it's nerve-wracking, and it shouldn't be nerve-wracking. It should be a pleasurable experience. So I wanted to read, and then I realized, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? I make a mistake.
Yeah, on every word. That's the worst thing. You can make a mistake on every word, and the whole audience does the whole thing with you.
They'll read the whole thing, right? But I'm thinking this is a metaphor for life, because we really don't have an answer for everything that we're supposed to do, right? So we do everything, every decision we make in our lives is based on kind of a maybe, or I'm not sure, but I hope I'm going to get it right. And so what happens when you make a mistake? You just made a mistake, and you move forward. And so so before I read, I turned around and I said to everyone, I'm going to read. And I said, this guy next to me, the one who is going to read instead of me, I said, he's going to help me. He's going to correct me. So please, no one shout out any corrections. And once I gave up the fear of making a mistake, and that's really what it was, and that's what they helped me do, is when you no longer have a fear of making a mistake, or the shame, or anything that's associated with a mistake, or even labeling it a mistake, I went through and I got it 70% correct, man. So I got a C, and I was so happy because I just let go and it all worked out. And I've started reading my own Parsha when I get an Aliyah at synagogue. I will let go and I will just read it. And if I make a mistake, big deal. And everyone knows not to shout a correction at me. So just the guy
It reminds me of the Albert Einstein story. He was a Jew too. So there you go. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, why don't you tell it? It's a good story.
Am I wrong? You know exactly what I'm talking. You tell it. I don't want to hijack the story, but that's what it reminds me of.
So Albert Einstein would go around and he'd make these lectures to these physics freaks, okay? And he'd go all around Europe, and he had a driver, something like this. And you know, the specific details aren't important, but he had a driver, and this driver would go with him into the place, the venue, and he would listen to the lectures too. And finally, he gets to, I don't know, one night, someone asked the question. Am I getting it right so far? So,
you can tell a story. I mean, the point depends on the point.
So you know, after many of these lectures occur, I don't know, some night someone asks the question, and he says to the person something to the effect of like, that question is so simple, even my driver can answer it, because the driver had heard all the questions, knew all the answers, and so his driver answered this complex physics question or something like that. Is that the one you were talking about?
No, well, yes and no. Yeah, the one I was talking about is like, you know, essentially the same, very similar. You know, Einstein goes and he's making all his lectures, and like everybody, you know, there's tons of physics PhDs and students in the room, and everybody is waiting for, you know, him to make a mistake always, right? And so it finally, there's like a simple math thing on the board, and he's like 3 + 9 = 12, and 18 hands shoot up and call him out, and he's like, yeah, right, so I made a mistake. Meanwhile, I'm the one who's, you know, putting together the theory of relativity. So I can make a mistake, you know, it's okay, it's all right, you know. Yeah, you know, it's you're setting yourself up to say like, I should live up to something, you know, all the time, you know, and you just do the best you can, and you know, that's all that's really can be expected of you, and you tell everybody in advance, right? That's the point. Yeah. That's the important part.
Yeah, that's what I did. Everyone knows. Everyone knows I'm gonna get I'm gonna make some mistakes.
So you're gonna make some mistakes.
It's not sport.
That's okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next one, you're kind of breaking up, Yirmiyahu. I don't know if you're.
Now that's you,
your
buddy.
Connection is bad or mine? It's me. I'm trying.
That's okay.
Okay. The next one, every person should respect his mother and father, but you should not listen to them if they tell you not to do the commandments. Okay? For I am God, your God, whom your parents must honor too. Okay, so here's that carve out, right? So we always hear honor your mother and father. But if your mother and father are giving you instructions to violate the Torah and be unholy, then you don't have to follow them. And because you must honor God and they must honor God too. So there's a carve out. Just because your parents say so doesn't mean it's always right. And we get to, you should not turn to worthless idols and worship them, for I am your God. That's fair enough. Because that's telling us, you know, the whole concept thing. Yeah. God is not something tangible. God is beyond that. So, but you had some, you know, I don't want to just go in and read a list, but you had one, you wanted to go to.
Oh, me? Oh, you mean about these other?
You wanted to go to 16.
Oh, well, there's definitely, there's a couple of.
There's a lot of things. You should not steal.
You don't steal.
Don't lie.
Well, last time we talked about a little bit about not cursing the deaf, right? And how that's kind of funny the way it's worded. And what it really means is that you should not curse people, even those who cannot hear your curses.
Yes, exactly.
It's not that you should just not curse the deaf, because that's like nobody's walking around being like just mean to the deaf people.
Well, in what is it juxtaposed with? It's juxtaposed
it's
with
don't throw a stumbling block in front of a blind person. Absolutely.
Right.
You know,
And so
like don't make it harder for them either. You know,
right. And so what is it saying? This is saying don't curse people and don't make, don't mislead people.
Yeah.
So don't do that. And when you're a judge, this is very interesting. This was in an earlier parsha too. You should not favor a poor person or respect a great person in judgment. You should judge your fellow correctly. So do not favor anyone because of their status. And that's
where we get the concept of justice being blind.
That's right.
Blind to status, right? Blind to status. Blind, and blind to, just the facts, ma'am. That's how we're how we're gonna do it. We don't care about your culture. We don't care about your belief system. We don't care what symbols you use. We just want the facts. Now I have a little trouble with 16, because it says you shall not be a gossip monger amongst your people, and I don't know how to reconcile with the fact that our tradition is filled with yentas. It's the biggest yenta tradition of all time. So,
so actually, every day, my daughter and I we read from this book. This is Chafetz Chaim, and this is a lesson a day. So every day, the Chafetz Chaim was a great rabbi who wrote this compendium on the concepts of proper speech. And so proper speech, that's lashon hara is bad speech. And you should not be a gossiper among your people. It is to be a gossip or to say things about people is lashon hara. That's bad to do that. So I can give you I'll give you a lesson from yesterday. This one is an example. All forms of lashon hara, that's bad speech, including gossiping, is prohibited, even when the information is true and accurate. Only in very specific circumstances is it permissible to say something that would otherwise be considered lashon hara. This will be discussed later. Slander, which is information that is not true, referred to as hotzat Hashem, spreading a bad name, is worse than lashon hara, which is derogatory but true. To relate derogatory information that is essentially true, but includes either exaggerations or even slight altering facts, is also considered hotzat shem ra. So, you're supposed to just be very careful with your speech. The introduction in this book is fantastic because it talks about how God breathed life into Adam. And so the breath also includes how we speak. So when God speaks that life, breathes that life, this is us using our mouth is similar to God bringing life into the world. And
speech is an act of creation. This is the secret of Sefer Yetzirah. This is the Isaiah 55:11. May the words that I speak manifest as reality. This is abracadabra. This is spell
casting. This is casting.
This is casting a spell, and you should not be. You have to be very, very careful with your words, and this is why we're going to. After this, we're going to be talking in the Testament of Solomon about every time Solomon encounters these demons or whatever, he asks them for their name. Is this the name? The name is the important thing. That's what happens in Ben Sirah, the alphabet of Ben Sirah, Elijah encounters Lilith. He says, "What's your name? What's your name?" He wants to know what your name is. The name is the important thing, and these things, take form and shape and manifest if you give something a name. And in fact, if you think about it, now think about this for a moment. You probably have zero memory of any time before you had speech. Before you had speech, think back to your earliest memories. It's very rare. You probably have a few memories in your mind from back when you were non-speaking, non-verbal. I do. I remember once maybe my mother looking at me in the crib and being upset. I was upset. But if you do not have words to put things into, they no longer continue on as memories or reality. And again, this is part of may the words that I speak, may his name and memory be forgotten, right? That's a curse, right? May his name and memory be forgotten. If you can't remember the name, you can't remember the memory. You can't be a word to it. And that's a whole concept in neurolinguistics, right? And this is why different cultures have different thought processes, because you think in language, and so this is why, Asians have different thought processes, and Western thought processes, and these processes are different, and they're different because of the constraints of the words we use. If we don't have words, you can't convey an idea. If you can't convey an idea, you can't make it reality. Sorry.
So even in Kabbalah talks about the Aleph Bet having very spiritual significance, and each letter
has a meaning. Sure,
has a meaning. So in all of that coming from God, and so let's break that down for a minute there. So all speech is from God, and then the Parsha begins with, I am holy, so you should be holy, so your speech should be holy as well. And I think that's where we get to that gossiper thing. And you're right, the yenta thing is like for those who don't know what a yenta is, in Yiddish, a yenta means kind of like a gossip.
A gossipy woman. Yeah. And but I was making a joke by talking about that, because but in the Jewish culture, I will say that gossip mongering is a very, very, very big deal. And in the book that I'm writing right now about the Psalms, there's about let's see, there's 150 some odd Psalms, and 10 of them are against gossip and slander.
Yeah.
That's really not an approved.
So maybe, I don't know. Rav Yirmiyahu, you and I grew up as Jews, within Jewish communities. So maybe it's just the inflection. Maybe in every community, people gossip, but it's just the way that Jews gossip that makes it more enhanced, maybe, the manner, the tone, maybe the inflection in it kind of enhances gossiping. Yes. But I think I would tend to think,
I don't think we have any more gossips than any other culture. I think you have in any type of culture, you have, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to say that women were responsible in most cultures for domestic communication between house to house, right? And that's what I think that's a trans-cultural phenomenon.
Okay. That you know what, that would make sense. That would make sense. So it's just a matter of, So they're a line of communication, but it's just a matter of what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like,
and
how do you know that, I mean, back in the day, I mean, when we were growing up, we were just at the tail end of party lines. I bet you that nobody 10 years younger than us even knows what a party line actually is. But like, I mean, that's what it was back in the day. Like, you have the town crier who tells you the news, and then you have Yentas. You got the Yenta News and Information Network System, and that's all it is. It's NBC, you know.
All right. So a party line was kind of like a chat room, right? You'd pick up your phone.
Yeah, like you would pick up a phone and there would be like 3 other people on the same line. They were total strangers. Can you imagine? And that's when, like, now people would use it for all sorts of naughty and perverted things. You'd have to watch your kid, but because
yeah, exactly.
but like, we would be mortified back then. But that's not what it was at. Nobody ever used it for that. So we were all too naive back then.
But what juxtaposed against not being a gossiper is not standing by. If your fellow is in danger, if their life is in danger, you have to step in. So what Rashi says, it says, you should not stand by your fellow's blood. I am God. So when it says, what Rashi says is, do not stand by your fellow's blood, actually means watching his death. If you're able to save your fellow person, if they're drowning or from a wild animal or robbers come upon them, intervene, do something. If you see something, do something.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Very
you can't
important.
Stand aside while your fellow's blood is shed. That's right.
And I guess subsumed within that is this concept of hashgacha pratit, divine providence. So the Baal Shem Tov and in other Kabbalistic circles, we all believe that God puts us in certain circumstances and brings us there for a purpose. So, meaning, if you are in this situation where you can do something and you can intervene, it was meant to be for you to intervene. And that goes true, when God puts us in these situations, that goes through for situations that might not be so pleasant as well in your own life. That everything comes from God, including the ability to save another person. So if you see someone drowning, they could be drowning spiritually. They could be drowning. They could be depressed. They could be in need of food or shelter. You have an obligation to your fellow person to assist them. You're not there alone.
Yeah, and we're this idea about individuality. We're all connected. You're really just helping another part of the universe with which you are a part of, right? You're like a little, part of. So
and then we get right into that in 17.
That's right.
It says you should not hate your brother in your heart.
In your heart.
Yes. So the heart, the mind, where does that in our soul?
The bowels.
So what's that? The bowels, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Gird your loins.
Listen, bile, right? Bile, the bilious personality. I mean, where does anger come from? In Torah, in Talmud, it can be the seat, can be the liver or a spleen and kidneys. It doesn't necessarily have to be the heart. So they're very specific. They're not using like heart necessarily. Yes, it's metaphorically, but that metaphorical meaning has also changed over the years, because the seat of anger it was not the heart, or it's the liver or spleen quite often.
Well, not in Torah. I mean, I think Torah, it really equates the heart as being the source of love.
I would agree, which is why that organ should not be corrupted. But and I'm saying that there's a specific reason that it mentions that one area and leaves. I mean, what is the Torah telling us? Right? It's in your heart, but your spleen is fine. You can hate something in your mind. You can hate something in your bowels.
Well, I think there was more of an understanding. So let's go back 2,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
I would venture to guess that people would have more of an understanding of the heart and the mind instead of like the way we function. We just kind of, I think, go throughout our daily life. You know, I want to eat, I'm going to go eat. I love my children. I love my parents. I love my job, but there's not this like whole understanding of the mind and the heart. I just think people may have had a deeper understanding of this Eastern philosophy. And when I say Eastern philosophy, Judaism is an Eastern religion.
We're part of Asia.
Yes, it's the Middle East. I mean, it is an Eastern religion. Rav Aryeh Kaplan said that in an interview I saw him give. Rav Aryeh Kaplan was a great Kabbalist, wrote many books, and he wrote books on Jewish meditation, and he said Judaism is an Eastern religion.
He's a pretty nice guy.
I know you have some thoughts about him.
I'm not saying anything negative about him.
No, I'm not saying negative, but I mean, it's okay to critique.
I'm saying he's terrific. He's a terrific guy, very highly respected. Absolutely. I absolutely wholeheartedly 100% agree with him on this.
So one thing that's kind of curious, and I'll throw this out there, is that the word for heart, the Hebrew word for heart, it's lev. And when we say we love someone, we say we love. How far apart is love from lev? You know, I wonder if the word love is derived from the Jewish word for heart being lev. It's kind of curious. Okay, you should continue.
Wait a minute. Wait, I'm gonna wait. I want to get back to this for a second. I like this. I don't want to leave from this topic.
We're not, because the whole 17 deals with this.
Okay, because I just want to say I looked it up. I looked it up for about the Talmud. Okay, and I about anger. Okay, and I here's what it says. Okay. Okay, not about. I'm also. It also talks about drunkenness too, but we won't talk about that. But anger, very interesting. The arrangement of the liver in the sequence of the digestive organs. The entire systematic of this book is artificial since it's not substantiated in the biblical and Talmudic sources. But according to the Talmud, the liver is the source of blood, and this is Barakot 55a. To the general population, it's the organ of anger. If a drop of gall falls into the liver, the anger is assuaged. And this is Barakot 61b. Later scholars consider gall to be the site of jealousy, 893. And that is Leviticus Rabbah 4:3. And so what I'm saying is that anger is associated with a certain organ, and that and it could. I'm not saying it doesn't affect every organ, but I'm saying that they didn't throw out heart randomly.
No, I think you can be angry in your heart.
Yes, I think no. What I think it's saying don't be angry in your heart, but you can be angry.
It's saying don't hate in your heart, meaning that hate can come from your heart, but love can come from your. But it's the recognition that love comes from your heart. Within that statement that you shouldn't hate from your heart, I think you can conclude that love comes from your heart.
Yeah, okay, I'll buy that. Sure, I'll buy that. But I'm just my point is only just that all of these the sense that like feelings, thoughts, love, hate, purity, these were all associated with various organs. Yeah. That organs were thought to be very centers of feelings. Yeah. I'm looking up hate now.
Okay, so it continues. You should continually rebuke your fellow, but you should not bear a sin by embarrassing them in public.
I like that one a lot too. I'll expound on that. You shall reprove your fellow and do not bear a sin because of him. You shall not take revenge.
Wait. But wait. Before we get to there,
yeah,
the Chumash I'm reading interprets, but you should not bear a sin because it relates back to rebuking your fellow. So
right, you don't want to commit a sin in your rebuking of someone.
So don't embarrass them. It's
that's
very
right. You have
important.
to do it nicely.
Nicely and privately. There is someone in my synagogue. When he corrects you, he does it in a way that's private and it's gentle and it's kind. And he says something like, I think the tradition is to do it like that. And it's after the whole thing is over, he'll like approach you and say, I think the tradition might be to do it this other way. I don't know if you have a different tradition.
Consider that, or
just to begin a discussion about it, because he doesn't want to assume that you might have a custom that has been handed down that you're supposed to do something a certain way. So rather than to
that's like people who encounter the tearing of the bread or the slicing of the bread, and then the fight breaks out.
Yep. Yeah. Right.
Right. I mean, it could be done a different tradition. I've seen people wrap their tefillin with different knots at the end.
Yeah.
And because there's
many. Yeah.
And you can't look at that person and say, well, that's wrong.
There are different opinions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the TCO, the way they're tied, there are different customs in different communities on how the tzitzit are tied.
Yeah. So you got to do that, not embarrassing people. You should make corrections and be kind you should rebuke people for when they do wrong, but you need to take them aside and do it in private, where you yourself are not committing a sin of being prideful or being embarrassing, humiliating someone else. All of these nasty things.
I think the idea is not to embarrass someone, and it says somewhere in the Talmud that when you embarrass someone, it's like I think it's like killing a world. It's like one of the worst sins to embarrass someone in public. So yeah,
that's not how medicine works. I have to say, like, so this is I was trained in medicine. The whole department was mostly Orthodox or secular Jews at St. Luke's Roosevelt in New York, and what you do is for radiology, right? It's all about X-rays and showing people X-rays, and you would. At noon conference, you would essentially take a case. They would show you a picture of an X-ray, and they would say, "What's the diagnosis?" You're supposed to look at the film and be able to speak coherently about it. And my program director was the most intimidating woman on the person, whatever. She was the most intimidating human being on the entire planet, because she would sit at the back of the room and you would be up at the front of the room, and you put your X-ray up and you'd be like, and she would say, you take the case and you would say something stupid, and she'd say, Colin, I can see it from here. Stand at the back of the room. My God, I can see it all the way back here. Colin, are you crazy? Oh my God, it was torture. It was the most humiliating thing of all time. Yeah, it was the worst.
So why don't you just begin at the back of the room?
I
I would have just begun at the back of the room and say, listen, I'm going to look from the back of the room.
She wasn't
And-
wrong. She taught me something, which was to go to the back of the room,
That's-
literally, because
That's
you get a big view of like what the hell. You're
Yes.
like, you can zoom in on that nodule. It's really, she wasn't wrong, okay,
Yeah.
in her advice, but she was very intimidating in the way she gave it.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
and so that goes back to my story earlier today about being
Actually,
in synagogue.
can I just ask a question really fast? I'm sorry.
Of course.
I
Yeah,
get
yeah.
what you're saying here, but how is that consistent with this thing where, like, when somebody makes an error when reading the Mikra, like during, Sabbath in the synagogue, everybody is supposed to shout out like the correction. That
Yep.
sounds
Yep.
a flagrant,
Yes. And I was going to point that out. Thank you for bringing that up. Is this Lydia?
Yeah.
my name's Lydia. Yeah.
Okay, Lydia, I'm sorry. Okay. Lydia, I was just going to bring that up, that it is an embarrassment for people to shout a correction. I mean, there's no reason for that. And it really, I was talking with a friend of mine who was raised in an extremely Orthodox community, very close community in Borough Park. And he left the community. It was a very difficult journey for him. He went through an organization called Footsteps that helped him transition out of the community, and he eventually went to Georgetown Law, and he's now a practicing lawyer. And he and I have spent a lot of time just kind of talking about these things. And I pointed that out to him because he was at my synagogue, and I had read Torah, and I made the mistakes, and no one was really shouting or anything like that. And I told him, I said, that's a shame. It's an embarrassment. It's a sport for some people to correct others, and especially in that context. And he said, I never thought about that. That's because you grow accustomed to this practice, and you don't realize that it's embarrassing someone. And he told a story about how this young man laned his Aliyah, and he was shouted so much he never went back up there to do it again.
Yeah.
And it's just a perfect example of like how embarrassment can prevent someone from, look, if Hitler was praised for his painting, then he would have ended up perhaps being a depressed painter in Germany as opposed to, this mass murderer. So, it doesn't mean you have to praise everyone for their art, but you get the point I'm trying to make. Embarrassing people can really turn them
Devastating consequences.
Yeah, devastating consequences.
Absolutely. I mean, you've turned someone away from the Torah, right? And public speaking. I mean, public speaking is the number one fear over death. It's the number one fear, and getting in front of standing up in front of a community and Torah, and that is really the big deal of bar bat mitzvah, right? Standing. I mean, you're asking children at a very, very, very young age, 12, 13, to stand up in front of an entire community and lead a service. It's a really big deal. It's a trial by fire. Every kid doesn't want to do it. Every kid afterwards says, thank God I did it. It was hard. And I mean, I almost never met anybody that said, oh, I wish I hadn't gone through. I mean, it was awful. They'll tell you, oh, it was awful, but I'm glad I did it, because they're able to stand in front of the community, which is it is the number one hard task. And you wouldn't treat, you should never publicly embarrass. That wouldn't fly, right? You wouldn't do that to someone on their first time.
No.
Right. So why would you treat an adult any differently? It might be their first time going to the Torah.
Doesn't
matter, right? If they're experienced or not. Yeah. We have only
we gotta
about
wrap
1
up.
minute.
let's close with this very, very important one. You should love your fellow as yourself. I am God. And this is what Hillel meant about this mitzvah when he said, this is the entire Torah. That is, love your fellow as yourself, and the rest is commentary. And, you know, there's this principle, okay, well, if the rest is commentary, then why are we learning all these other mitzvot, right? Well, the reason why we're learning all these other mitzvot is because the principle behind these mitzvot is this love that is ever expansive, that you have the ability to do this, to love everyone. To love everyone is to love yourself, is to love God, it's to be one with everything. And so I leave everyone with that. Let us all in our hearts extend our deepest love to everyone in the world. And we should pray for peace. There should be unity among all the nations, and we should be one.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen. Thank you.
Love you guys. Looking forward to
Love
next
you
week.
too. Give
Okay.
Sammy a big kiss and hug for me.
I
I
will.
saw him. Wow. All right. Love. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.